Okay, welcome to the Marriage Boss podcast, and I'm totally pumped up today because I've got a special guest. Dr. Jennelle is a PhD psychologist and relationship advisor at Big Change of Heart, where she helps people invest in and strengthen the love in their life. Whether transitioning out of an unfulfilling relationship or into their great love, Dr. Jennelle provides support, guidance, and advice on the matters of the heart that matter most. She received her doctorate of philosophy in psychology in 2012 from Northeastern University after 10 years of studying psychology. Dr. Jennelle's undergraduate work and dissertation focused on the investigation of mental health-related behaviors in adults and children. She's taught abnormal psychology at the university level multiple times, in addition to acting as an advisor to undergrad students. Following her graduate work, Dr. Jennelle focused primarily in the physical health space, guiding others to reach their wellness goals through teaching nutrition courses, weight loss counseling, and fitness. Dr. Jennelle currently specializes in helping individuals embrace the big changes that come with choosing to live for love. Jennelle is the co-parent of 3 amazing children, twin sons, the Tinies, and a daughter, the Little, and shares their life in a beautiful home just 20 minutes from the ocean with her partner in love. Jennelle is the cultivator of harmony and enjoys spending time with family and friends, relaxing outdoors in the sunshine over delicious food and beverage, and just as much she enjoys exercising with a soulmate workout, finding new tools to make her life more efficient, and learning from mentors who continually help her to be better. Dr. Jennelle, welcome to the Marriage Boss podcast.
Thank you so much. It's awesome to be here. I'm also quite pumped up about it. I'm very excited. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad to have you. And when we were talking earlier, we came together obviously through Nirvana, just like meeting online and having some common interests. And after we got to talk about each other's lives and stories, we kind of came upon the topic of love is thicker than water, kind of referring to that people come into our lives and they're not related to us, and so we have an opportunity to get their gifts and find out, what place they're going to have in our lives. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about, what you want to go with and just run with that.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, the idea of love being such an open door to so many different relationships came when I was pretty young, actually. I think from even age 12, or maybe even before that. I grew up in a pretty nuclear family, 2 parents, a brother, a sister, but my sister actually had a different dad than me. And for our childhood, he wasn't around, and my sister called my dad Dad. And that was the first example of sort of that loving, you can love something beyond that isn't necessarily yours from day one. Mm-hmm. And that sort of evolved over time. I had all these aunts and uncles that were not actually my aunts and uncles. Certainly, friends of my parents. My parents had a very tight circle of friends, and they became my second family. And that was always how I grew up. Our house was very full of laughter. My parents met doing theater, so it was a loud environment, and that way a very open, sharing environment. Theater is kind of built on that. So, cool. That was a very, for me, that was a huge foundation of how I think I became such a high self-disclosure, as I always say. I'm willing to share who I am all the time.
Love that.
And my mother got divorced from my dad later and was married to her 3rd husband, and he had 4 kids. And we immediately became this blended family of 7 kids. And most of the time, 6 of us were living under the same roof. My mother's no longer even married to him, but they are still my sister and brothers, at least, especially the older 2, because of just location and how I see them. And that to me was a very big indication of how just the experience together, we were kids together, we played video games in the basement together, all the normal things, that they will forever be siblings to me, even though, life has changed and in no legal way are we even in each other's lives really anymore. And that became kind of where I decided too. It was around probably that 12 to 13 age when all this happened that I had this really strong feeling that I wanted to either adopt or sort of be a parent to a child that already existed. I had the urge to be a parent and not the urge to biologically breed, if you will.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the beginning for me of thinking about love being very, translational across many different mediums and people. And, I have very, very close mentors from high school all the way through college, because, and I still go out to my first college professor. We go out to dinner all the time together. She's one of my favorite people in the world. I love connecting with people when you have similar interests, even when you don't, but when you have a commonality with sort of that open heart philosophy. You know, the phrase, I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I always say, and then I wrap that shirt around everybody I meet.
Oh, that's adorable. So how do you support someone who maybe grew up just the opposite, where they were, taught, and their story is, you have to be related to someone, you have to be connected by, blood, or at the very least marriage. So how can people listening get a little bit more, of the mindset that you have? Obviously, your environment kind of gave that to you. So how would you say someone who's listening who, really wants to feel like that and welcome more people into their world, how would they do that?
Yeah, I think that's sort of my goal in life, is to have people have that open-minded concept where, everyone that crosses your path, you should sort of take them in until there's some reason that they've, abused you in some way where you kind of put up a wall. But,
Okay.
It's not easy. And I think a lot of people that didn't grow up with the same kind of open door that I did have trouble understanding it. And it's not necessarily that they can't feel it. I mean, I think the biggest thing is just to start with the love, just to say, I really care about this person, and I really don't care what label it has in that way. And that's kind of the place that you want to start. You want to think about those sorts of feelings aside from the labels or the designations that society, I think, kind of puts on it. And
so maybe we have to ignore logic sometimes and what we were taught and shown, and let our heart guide us. So if we really feel a connection or a spark with someone, explore that, let that happen.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of the sort of traditional, I consider myself non-traditional Nelle is how I refer to myself, because I do think that it's important to put away some of those traditions of how you think about even marriage and even the way you parent, all of those things, because our world has evolved significantly since those,
Sure
institutions came about, right?
Yeah.
And I think, I find myself in a situation I never would have expected when I was younger, but I am engaged to a woman. I was engaged prior to my high school sweetheart. And now together with her ex-husband, because they had kids, we co-parent 3 kids. There's 3 moms and 2 houses with, one dad. And we have to sort of figure out a different way. And I will say I grew up at the most eclectic out of all 4 of us. So sometimes it's sort of my job, if you will, to kind of also say, it's okay. I love these kids like they were out of my body. To me, it would make no difference. Yeah. And not everybody understands that. So I continually sort of tell people that if you love someone or care about someone deeply, that's sort of all that matters. You don't really need to have an explanation, a tie that somebody else understands. Yeah. And I think that's sort of the part where if people are not from that open background, that they should really embrace the idea that, anyone that can be a good influence in your life is someone you should want to have around. Yeah. And
well, you remember when we were talking yesterday, we were talking about how all these other people come into our lives. So from, when we're born, we have, if we have parents or people in the house, guardians, whatever, we could have siblings, could have neighbors, friends, the first people you see, family, then you go to school, then you meet kids and teachers. And so you have other people influencing you. So the funny thing is that all these other legitimate, legal, logical people who come and influence us along the way, they're fine. We always condone them. So parents say, oh yeah, get around good teachers, get around good mentors, get around people who are leaders, whatever. But the strange thing is that if somebody comes into your life as a love interest, or someone you maybe, through this relationship, like your relationship, well, then we start to think, well, we don't know. We're not measuring that the same way. But I love this about you. I love that you are so loving and open, and that you're welcoming, and you're an example, one that I want to follow and teach and share with my audience. Of it doesn't matter who it is. It just matters how they act, how they speak, and how you feel with them. And so the message of this show is about permission and freedom to have people come into your life, and you go into other people's lives with no judgment, no notions, no story. It's about cleaning up your story. It's about if you had a story you don't like, you can change it today. With this episode, you can listen to this and say, you know what? Tomorrow, clean slate. Everyone who comes into my world from now on, I'm going to give them freedom, and I'm going to have freedom, and I'm going to give myself permission to feel what that is. I'm not going to look at their color, size, height, gender, where they come from, their past. I'm going to basically judge them based on how I feel and how we interact together and each other's gifts.
Yeah. And it's funny, one of the things that I always say, and I've written in many of my blog pieces, is the phrase that it doesn't matter where the love comes from, it just matters that it's there.
Yeah.
And I very, very much believed, and that's exactly, it's that freedom and permission to say, this person is not a parent to my child, but that person could be a great influence. My very good high school friend is very close in our lives, and now she's become the aunt of our kids. I mean, by no legal, biological way,
Yep.
but they see her as such an important role. And I think raising kids, you realize more and more of those influences on your children, how much they don't need to be the sort of typical for it to be really, really useful to their development. And I wish that as adults we still had that same idea, that we got excited about meeting the next person in the same way and letting them bring what they have to the table as an opportunity to learn and grow and change. I mean, this experience of mine.
You and I are an example of that, and we hit it off right away. I remember when we started communicating online, we were very excited about each other's work and lives, and then once we got talking, it just accelerated, and I'm sure people will see and feel the connection and what we want to do together and what our message is individually and together. And like I think about my neighbors and what a great impact they've had on my kids and on our own lives, and how everyone that I meet now, I'm looking for that. I'm actually searching for the gifts in that other person. I want to know what they bring to the world. I'm trying to bring it out of people. So I think this is a wonderful thing. I think it's a wonderful thing to do, and I think that this is going to be a very important message that we're delivering. I think that we came upon it just because of your situation and us talking about it, but I think that as we're talking about it right now, I'm feeling even more excited about what the next step in this message can be, because it's feeling huge to me.
And I think a huge thing, I mean, my daily work, if you will, my line of work is really helping people build fulfilling relationships and, romantic, and either getting out of one that isn't fulfilling or figuring out the best way to do the relationship you've chosen, whether it's with kids and divorce, and there's lots of complications. However, I think the very foundation of all of that is that you have to be open to accepting the people that come into your life as being a possibility, and also being vulnerable to that. I mean, you learn a lot from everyone that crosses your path, and I think that if you are closed off at all, or you have fear, or you kind of start from that almost negative mindset, you miss a lot of opportunities to meet people that can really enhance your life. And I always say that I'm the type of person that you have my trust until you break it, and I meet a lot of people that say you have to earn my trust, and it's a very different mindset. And I think that you keep a lot of people at bay if you have that sort of idea that everyone's out for themselves and they could hurt me, or that situation where I think if you walk into it saying, like you said, what do you have, what's your gift, what are you bringing to the world that I can learn from, or that I just think is really awesome, or that I want to experience more of. It's
especially when we are somehow in charge of raising children or coaching children. I coached baseball for a long time, and I took it really seriously. I felt like when I went down to the field, somebody was bringing their kids to me almost like to babysit and mentor.
Yeah.
The baseball was secondary. Teaching them how to catch and hit and throw was a way of getting their attention so that I could then mentor them and teach them life lessons and help them become great young men and women. And I think that the same thing holds true when we meet adults. When I meet an adult today, I want to find out what that person's looking for, or what their next step is, or if they're in any pain, and what they want to be when they grow up. I'm famous for asking adults. I was with an 81-year-old guy the other night, and he said he was retiring from he's a professor. He said, I'm retiring, and I said, so what are you going to be when you grow up? And he actually had an answer. He said that he bought a ranch in Texas. It was like 24 acres, and he was going to open like a spiritual retreat. And have people come, different churches and what have you. And, so I just thought that was such a great answer. And so I think we all have to figure out what we want to be when we grow up. And this is it's a great message for everybody of all ages, because people are going to keep coming into our lives. And we've all heard the spiritual and read the spiritual texts on, they come for a reason, and everyone's a teacher and everyone's a student. But we're going to give, this is action. This is what we can do in real life, other than to sit back and meditate on it. What happens when you meet somebody new? And you got to give them your attention. You got to ask them what's up, what's going on with them, and talk a little bit about when you meet a new person, what goes on, and what's Nelle's process when you meet a new person.
Yeah, but first, I'm always, I love hearing about when I love the question, what do you do, and it not being about work, more like who are you, and hearing about the things that just light up their face, whatever it is that makes them the most excited. And I personally love when the people I come across actually have really strong interests or values that I have no concept of. Wow. I always use the example that my brother got really into paintball when he was in high school. I had no idea what it was, neither did my mom, and my mom decided to learn all about it, and it became she would have never known anything about that if randomly her son hadn't been into it. And I think I've learned a lot. My very close group of girlfriends, we are all very different. We're all very strong-minded, but all very different in the way that we apply that. And I think that that's the sort of thing. I love walking into a situation and asking somebody, what are you about? What gets you excited? What are you really interested in? What are your hobbies? And I think it's always possible to find commonalities even in the people that are the most different from you in lots of ways. And I think as just human beings, we always tend to feel really good when we're like, oh, me too. So no matter what the differences are, if you can find even those little bits of common ground, you tend to sort of start at a place where we're not that different, so we can learn from each other, or we can be open to that change or to that growth from what we both can bring. So I think in that first meeting, it's important to get both, honestly, that sort of thing that connects you, but also that thing that doesn't, and how it's so, really great that, you can have similar interests, but be very different people.
Yeah, it sounds like we have to find out about the other person first.
Yep.
We have to care enough and listen enough and give them our attention. And then we have to, not make it about us. So giving, giving first, very important with children, to teach them how to, think about the other person first. Imagine if every child was raised to think about the other person and to ask them a question and to care about who they are, not what they are, or where they were raised, or what color or size they are, but really who the person is and what they're interested in. I think that's I'm thinking about our first opportunities to do this is school, or maybe around the neighborhood. But then as we grow, we get the opportunity to do this in secondary education, and then in our jobs, where, we're scared at each step of the way. We're scared to go to school. We're scared to go to college. We're scared to get the job, because we're going to go to a place where we don't know anybody.
Right.
And so I think that the tools that we're sharing and this mindset is so valuable at every step of the way. And certainly as we get older, when we start to maybe not feel as confident about who we are anymore, elderly, when you start to get older, or you start to feel like you're maybe losing your way a bit, you can lose the confidence and you can lose this ability. So meeting new people and being open to maybe what they're going to give you is so important. I think these are super 101 life skills.
Yeah, and I think interestingly with that, I am a huge proponent of, I always say share back, because that means that someone had to share first.
Yeah.
So like you just said, putting it out there first and learning about someone. But I think it's so important to share your story, relation, whatever it is, back, so that because you create that bond. As if you just ask them lots of questions and you find out about them, but you don't really offer much about yourself, it doesn't feel like a safe environment. It doesn't feel like a fostering of a relationship. So I think it's so important to ask those questions and then say, oh, well, in my experience, or, oh, I feel the same way, or, oh, I'd never had that, or whatever. But I say that's sort of a big catchphrase, even in everything we do, in all of our podcasts, everything, we always sort of say, we want to hear what you have to say, but we will always share back just as much.
Good.
And I think that that's a huge part of that feeling connected. You have to kind of both be willing to do it.
That does feel better. When you put it that way, it does feel like you've got to create a safe place, and talking a little bit about yourself gives that person a little bit more That's a good point. You got me thinking about that. Yeah. It can be totally weird if it's too one-sided.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. All right. You got me thinking now.
Yeah,
Right.
and it's funny. I mean, I like to also create a space for people where sometimes I do start off by sharing a lot of things that are not what everybody is comfortable talking about. So I then set the stage that way and hope that people share back with me because I've given them the space to say, hey, I've been through crazy stuff too.
Yeah.
And so it can work both ways, but it's sort of, you're not going to get people to share the good stuff if you're not also sharing the good stuff.
That's true. True. So let's talk about how, let's talk about a little bit about your work and let's promote a little bit more, Dr. Jennelle stuff. Like, what do you want to tell our audience about, how can they find you? I think that your message and your attitude and your bright light is so important. And I want people to know how to find you and, tell us about, what you do and what you'd want them to know you for.
Yeah, absolutely. So I call myself a relationship advisor for a very specific reason. It's not a counselor. It's not a coach. I don't do marriage counseling, which people think of as like when it's broken, then you go. But think of a financial advisor, right? If you want to be more stable in your future with finances, you need to go see a financial advisor when you're my age and not wait until you're retiring.
Yeah.
This is my big message when it comes to relationships and love is that you have to put the work in up front, and real love does take work, and we can't wait till it's broken to try to fix it. We need to be working on it all the time.
Wow.
So I really try to get in people's faces about like, you don't have to be having a horrible time with your partner to want to make sure that you continue to have the good stuff be good and better. So I started this through, I see people all the time for just whatever relationship love issue is going on in their life. But my big passion came through with the Big Change of Heart, which is our company that I co-founded with my co-host on our podcast, Becky. And it's really all about when you have realized that either a relationship you're in is not giving you what you want out of a loving relationship and you need to move out of it. And then as you go through that transition, finding that great love. Okay. And the older you get in some ways, there's more complicated relationships when you find your great love. There's multiple, kids from different families. There may be gender changes. I mean, I went from being in a relationship with a man to being with a woman. There may be just, our backgrounds are very different. There's lots of different class, race, all of that plays a role. So for Big Change of Heart, it's all about helping people have a safe space where they can talk about wanting to leaving, and now being in something that they wanted, but it's really complicated and hard. Okay. And letting it be a place where you can work through those issues without feeling like someone's judging you because you changed your whole life for this person. And how could you do that and then sometimes be unhappy or be upset or need help? You should have known apparently how to do all this on your own. So we try to really create that safe space in a lot of ways. We have a podcast that comes out every Monday. It's the Big Change of Heart podcast, where we both offer our perspectives in very different ways. Becky and I both had big changes of heart, and she's married to her husband of now 7 or 8 years, and I'm with my fiance, but our paths were somewhat similar when it came to the decisions we made along the way. So we like to offer our two perspectives on the podcast, and we also have a great community on Facebook where we connect with other people that understand that love should be a priority and that it takes work to keep it going. And so that's the Big Change of Heart community on Facebook. That is, it's a closed community, but anyone can join. And we always encourage people to come there if they want a place that they can talk about these issues and know that there's no judgment. We have, it's very open. We're non-traditional in pretty much every respect, so that there's no judgment about anything. It
sounds terrific. It sounds needed. It sounds like almost everyone has had, these thoughts and this happen in their lives, and so much now. We really want people to feel like they can be who they want to be and have the life and certainly the love that they want and deserve. So I love what you're doing. I love the podcast. I love the message of you and your business. And, I couldn't be happier to have you on. Let's talk about some links. So we have basically, they can find you at Dr. Jennelle. Yep. And it's Jennelle. So DrJennelle. drjennelle.com. Yep. And you can also be found, like we said, on Facebook. And then for all things Big Change of Heart, they can go to www.bigchangeofheart.com. And that's a terrific site. And you've got the podcast links on there and all the other stuff that you do. And and then I'll put links in the show notes to all this stuff.
Great.
So that everyone knows how to find you and all the great stuff you're doing. And I so enjoyed having you on the show, and we're going to do this again, and we're going to do some more stuff other than this.
Absolutely.
So
so much.
thank you for coming and sharing all your great info, and couldn't be happier to have you in my life.
Well, I feel the same way. Thank you for having me, and I am very happy to have been able to be here and share this, and I look forward to what we're going to do next.
Good. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
Have a great
Bye.
day.